As you may know, we just had a statewide call, a call that involved more than 30 state agencies that are involved in helping to respond to this hurricane, a call that involved local officials, county officials, everyone around the entire state of Texas that is involved in this process. We talked to people from the Gulf Coast region all the way up to North Texas who are helping in their own way to respond to these challenges. Let me make several points and then I'll take your questions. First, I want to thank FEMA, the Department of Homeland Security, the President for their commitment to helping Texas respond to these challenges. I want to thank the Red Cross for all that they are doing. I want to thank Chief Nim Kidd for his leadership, as well as Director McCraw for all that he does in helping us respond to these types of challenges. As far as the situation that we are in, it's a situation that has been evolving, one from a fairly difficult to ascertain tropical storm into one that's turned into a very complex and dangerous hurricane. It's a hurricane that's going to prove more dangerous than many hurricanes. Not only are we going to be dealing with the high winds that typically come with what should be a Category 3 hurricane, but we are going to be dealing with immense, really record-setting flooding in multiple regions across the state of Texas. As you know, this is a hurricane that will come inland and then is prognosticated to just hover for a long period of time. It could be days. And during that long period of time, there will be a tremendous amount of rain dropped on miles upon miles of Texas. This is going to lead to what was described earlier in our conference call as record flooding at multiple locations, ranging all the way from the Corpus Christi area all the way up to the Houston area. There are several stages of reaction that are needed right now. One is in order to help Texans best be able to deal with and respond to these challenges, it is essential that while there still may be some time over the next few hours, Texans who are in areas that have been declared as evacuation areas, it could be your local official who has declared an emergency evacuation. You need to heed that call if at all possible. Even if an evacuation order has not been issued by your local official. If you are in areas between Corpus Christi and Houston, and maybe even some other areas, especially low-lying areas, you need to strongly consider evacuating. Because here's what's going to happen. You may think that the initial surge is something that you will be able to deal with. What you don't know and what nobody else knows right now will be the magnitude of flooding that will be occurring over the coming days in the aftermath of the initial surge. If you wait until you realize how serious this condition is, you likely will find that it's too late for you to be able to evacuate. So I would urge everybody who has the possibility to consider evacuating as soon as possible. The second stage after that, it will be the search and rescue stage. We already have a large number of both personnel, boats, helicopters, and other facilities that will enable a multitude of state-based officials to be able to go through the search and rescue process. We will be there to help as many people as we possibly can. But of course, that search and rescue process will not be able to begin until after the hurricane components have begun to die down. And of course, you don't want to put yourself into a situation where you could be subject to a search and rescue. You have the power and the ability right now to be able to avoid being stuck into a search and rescue situation if you make the decision to get out of harm's way before it is too late. Another challenge that people just need to be aware of. There have already been reports of tornadoes, and this is just a natural component that comes along with hurricanes. We anticipate that the number of tornadoes will increase in the coming days. So it's something that you simply have to be constantly vigilant about. And remember that as you're trying to deal with these tornadoes that could arise, you may be doing that when you're already out of power, when you're already out of supplies, when your ability to listen to news or learn about what may be happening may be compromised. There again is another reason why it may just be better for you to go ahead right now and go through the process of evacuation. I have issued a request for a presidential disaster declaration, a major disaster declaration that I issued to the president moments ago. This, of course, will trigger the assistance or additional help and assistance from the federal government that the state of Texas is asking for. We can obviously tell already at this stage this is going to be a very major disaster. I would like to run through several of the detailed reports that were provided by several of the many agencies that participated in our conference. The Texas Military Service, for example, have already activated more than 1,000 personnel and will be adding 300 more. They are including the provision or providing of vehicles, aircraft, as well as shelters. Texas Task Force. This is Texas Task Force 1 and 2, I think, are the organizations that will have a leadership role in the search and rescue process. They have amassed 900 personnel available for participation in the search and rescue process. Now, we have game wardens here in the state of Texas who are already at work and helping to respond to this. Obviously working with, among other things, boats and working multiple locations in the affected areas. Importantly, they pointed out that all state parks will be open to evacuees at no charge. So, and I'll be going through some evacuation information as I go along in no particular order. But one place that people can go to if they are considering relocating to an evacuation location is a state park, and importantly, absolutely no charge for that during this emergency time period. DPS troopers have mobilized to help respond in the entire area ranging from San Antonio to Corpus Christi and to all impacted regions. The Red Cross now, as usual, is playing a vital role. They already have 7 shelters open. They will be adding 47 more that are on standby for a total of 54 shelters. And they are ready to aid anybody who needs any type of shelter assistance. The easiest way to try to get a hold of them to find out maybe the shelter closest to you is to call 1-800-RED CROSS. We have the state health services involved also. They have, among other things, 4 shelters open, primarily in San Antonio now. The reality is whenever anything like this happens, as people are displaced, there are certain people with certain either acute or unique health care needs, and it's important that people understand that the state health services will be available to assist in any particular needs. The Texas Division of Emergency Management has deployed 500 buses for evacuation. Some people may be wondering, well, they may be thinking they want to evacuate, but how is it they're able to do so? Because they don't have any mode of transportation. It's important that they understand that these more than 200 buses are going to be available at multiple locations around the state of Texas. If you're looking for one of those buses, perhaps the easiest thing for you to be able to do would be to contact either your local emergency management personnel or local law enforcement who can direct you to the location where you can find one of those buses for evacuation. The Texas Health and Human Services Commission is working with state living centers. More than 200 people have already been moved to San Antonio from Corpus Christi state-supported living centers, and that process will continue. We want to make sure that people across state know that if you have a friend or relative in one of those centers, the state is being very aggressive and active in ensuring that their care is taken care of. Once again, an entity that is always helpful is the Salvation Army. They have organized 32 mobile feeding units, and that is on top of feeding units that are provided by the Red Cross, as well as a multitude of other entities. Right now, we have the demonstrated ability to shelter more than 41,000 evacuees if the need arises. The bottom line is that the state of Texas, working in partnership and collaboration with officials at the local level, are responding to this hurricane in a very aggressive way. First, to minimize any loss of life. Second, to ensure that the needs of our fellow citizens will be addressed as swiftly and as comprehensively as possible. With that, why don't I take a few questions?
Why wasn't the evacuation orders issued sooner? You've expressed, doubt that few people have evacuated. Why wasn't it issued sooner? Have they been forceful enough in getting people to get out?
Well, those are issues that local officials issue, whether they be mayors or county judges who have a good feel for their own regions. In, let's say, Nueces County, for example, there are certain low-lying areas where evacuation orders were issued. Higher areas, evacuation orders were more voluntary, if I understand it correctly. And so those who know the topography of their particular region would have the best idea about who needs to be subject to evacuation orders.
Governor, during the briefing, I heard that the amount of money spent so far has hit $900 million. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Actually, you can take a couple of zeros off of that. It is $9 million, but those are costs by state agencies, primarily focused on personnel as well as other resources. So that has nothing to do whatsoever with regard to the cost incurred at the local level or in the private level. And you can expect that that cost is going to be far higher than that.
And has a call for contraflow on the interstates been made yet?
For contraflow, it is not. I have asked repeatedly, including during a conference moments ago, as well as earlier today, if that was necessary. And I've been told every single time it has not been necessary because the traffic lanes for evacuees have not gotten so congested that contraflow needs to be done. But know that TxDOT and all other authorities are fully aware of what the traffic flow looks like, and they're able to move nimbly and swiftly to ensure the swiftest level of evacuation.
Is there an estimate of how many people have evacuated and how many people remain in mandatory evacuation areas?
Yeah, I have no idea about either of those numbers. I've heard no one articulate any number of those, or any number about those.
Governor, have you heard any reports that Border Patrol was operating at checkpoints, slowing things down? Has that been communicated to you? And if so, do you have any reaction?
I have not heard anything about that, other than the suggestion is that they are not hampering either the evacuation effort or safety effort of anybody in any way.
Governor, is it true that undocumented folks who attend or go to these evacuation shelters are not going to be asked for their identification?
That's what I'm told.
Are you okay with that?
Our main focus here in a situation like this is the safety and security and the protection of life. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure everybody is safe.
Governor, how long do you expect Texas is going to be feeling the impact of this storm?
It will be, listen, let's be fair about this in an estimate. Understanding that the center force of this may move a little bit, but the primary problem that's going to last the longest is going to be the rain and the flooding. And it's something that is estimated that we will be dealing with for a week or two. And people will remember Tropical Storm Allison, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to escape something like that. But if you look at the prognosticated number of inches of rain that we're going to be dealing with, it will be around the same amount that came down during Allison. Whether or not it would be concentrated over a particular region like it was in Houston with Allison is hard to tell right now. All we know is that it is already prognosticated to provide a record amount of flooding in multiple regions, ranging from Corpus Christi over to Houston. And those are challenges that we will deal with for at least a week, if not longer.
Learning the lessons from Allison, wouldn't you think that you should be evacuating more areas of Houston, at least in those low-lying areas? We've not had any mandatory evacuations of those.
Right. Say, I missed your first part.
Just saying, learning the lessons from Allison, how quickly those highways and freeways flooded and people were unable to get out of their homes, people sitting in their attics, you know, Katrina-like, looking at water coming through their homes. Should those low-lying areas not be being evacuated from Houston?
Well, as far as I understand it right now, and I could be wrong about this, but as far as I know right now, there have been no mandatory evacuations from the Houston area. Right now, it appears that the Houston area will be spared the brunt of the hurricane force and the surge that goes along with it. And so that will minimize some of the danger, with the possibility of flooding being what it could be. Again, I would urge people to strongly consider the evacuation process, because there is possibility, if not probability, that a lot of people are going to go a long time without access to basic necessities, without access perhaps to water, power, food. And so if you have the ability to evacuate and go somewhere else for a little while, it would be good. It's also fair to say that with the prognosticated rain, it's going to be hard for businesses to be open and for normal functions to take place. I realize we have a weekend coming up, and a lot of people who typically go to work may not be going to work. But I wouldn't be surprised if work and school and other facilities like that are going to be compromised in their ability to be open on Monday and maybe the early part of next week. That's pure guess right now. My point is this, and that is, if you want to take charge of your life and ensure that you are providing the greatest possible safety for yourself and your family, I think it would be a good idea for you to take a few days off, get out of the Houston area, be safe, and you can always get back, get home, and clean up later.
There's inland areas that are going to be hit as well. What's
So-
the state's role for those inland areas that are going to get as the storm moves inland? We're talking about the coast a lot, know that that's an immediate. What about those inland areas that also see a lot of flooding? San Antonio
Sure.
is one of those areas.
Sure. The report that we had moments ago covered all of that. Everyone in every single region of the state of Texas is on alert and prepared to deal with the consequences of what may be coming their way. You mentioned San Antonio. There's a prospect for a lot of rainfall in San Antonio. History teaches that that means a lot of the creeks and rivers likely will have substantial flooding. Local, county, and state officials are prepared to respond to that as we speak.
Can you or the state put less pressure on local officials to call for evacuations?
Is-
You seem to disagree with some of the calls that are being made locally.
I think it is important for the local officials who have the authority and responsibility for this to be the ones to make the call. I can be suggestive of what I would do, and that is if I were living in the Houston region, as I once did, I would decide to head to areas north of there. And listen, there are so many places where there are shelters that are going to be open in Dallas, in Waco, in Austin, in San Antonio, and in countless other parts of the state of Texas that you can go to if you want to go to a place where it won't cost you anything to stay, where food and beds and shelter will be provided to you. On top of that, of course, there will be other places that will be open, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and parts of that state of Texas. But think of your life first. The most important thing that we're dealing with right now is human life. My top goal is to be able to make it through this storm in a way in which we lose no lives. And so my hope is that our fellow Texans will follow that advice and put your life first and your property second. Thank y'all very much. We will have ongoing updates also. Yeah, I'm going to be departing and going to San Antonio to the shelter and maybe some other places there this afternoon.
I'll have details on that later, guys. Director McCraw? Yes, sir. Can we ask you a quick question after the governor leaves?
Did the president give you any assurances, Kevin?
Yeah, I'll answer this real quick. Listen, I had a terrific conversation with both the president and then separately with the head of Homeland Security as well as the head of FEMA in Washington, D.C. And all of them provided strong, unequivocal assurances of their commitment to support and help Texas in any way. And we've had that. We have the regional FEMA administrator right here who works hand in glove with the state of Texas, not just on this, but consistently. He's been around for about 30 years or so. This is not his first rodeo. He knows how this works, and he knows how Texas works. He and Nim Kidd and our whole team work very collaboratively together.
Thank you, voting director.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah, right there. I heard you discussing with some of the folks that are running shelters in regards to these are shelters and they're not an immigration enforcement location. ICE put out a statement saying that they are not going to do any kind of enforcement action at shelters. What was your message to these people who are running shelters today that you want in regards to this immigration stuff?
Well, it's clear, and the government made it clear, and certainly we made it clear that we're not doing any immigration enforcement in these locations. I think ICE has made it clear, the director of ICE has made it clear as well. And that goes not just in those locations, but it's getting out of those locations. And we've got these inland checkpoints. And if we're having, issues in terms of there's needs evacuation from the low-lying areas in the Rio Grande Valley, we need to move people. And life is first and foremost.
So during traffic stops or anything like that, you are not questioning anyone's
No,
immigration status?
we never do that anyway. We don't do that we never do that unless there's probable cause. Okay?
Or checkpoints either.
Checkpoints too.
Chief Kidd, do you have any figures or estimates of the number of people that evacuated?
And I know that's the number that everyone is looking for, so let me explain why it's difficult to get. Yes, sir. Happy to.
Yeah, I know we're all looking for what is the number of people that have evacuated, and we would love to see that. Let me explain why it's difficult to get. When people got the message that this was going to become a Cat 3 storm yesterday after 10 o'clock, most of them were at work. Kids might have been at school. They might have been doing whatever they were doing that you were doing at 10 o'clock yesterday. So once they got that message, they still had to get off work, go home, board up their houses, start packing things up, and then get on the road to go find shelter. Many people are going to stay with friends or family, or they're going and renting hotel rooms. There's no way for us to tell who's rented which hotel room or staying with aunts and uncles and cousins. So what we're focused on is making sure that people that don't have a place to stay know that they have a shelter that they can go to. Now, we're also going to be asking for numbers of shelters on a daily basis. Let me give you the science behind how that works. Our shelter managers go through at midnight and start counting heads. But that doesn't mean that people are going to stay in those shelters overnight or that they will stay there for long at all. So you will see our shelter numbers go up and down and fluctuate. And nobody's trying to hide anything from you of why it's so hard to get a shelter number and a head count. But the truth of the matter is, they're free, red-blooded people, Americans that can go and come and go as they please, and we don't hold them in a shelter to count them. We give them a place where they can come, they can get 3 meals, they can get a bed, and then get on with their lives.
Chief, with that said, is it correct that I've heard that the capacity that we have in the state right now is just 41,000?
It's around 41,000 right now, in addition to Red Cross shelters. I am.
That seems to be a low number.
It does seem to be a low number, but Rudy, here's the other part of that. We still don't know how many hotel rooms and other places that people will go. What statistics have shown us is people, only about 10% of the population that's evacuated actually goes to a shelter. So we have 400,000 to 500,000 people in these evacuation areas. City of Corpus Christi is only 300,000. You look at that surrounding areas. I'm comfortable where it is right now. When we get about half of the capacity that we have, When that fills up, we're not even at 10% of our capacity right now. When that fills up, we will start looking for additional people. And here's the other thing. There are state shelters that we open and we support. There are shelters that cities and counties open and they support. There are also shelters that churches and civic organizations open and they support, and they have no requirement to report back to the state that they've opened the shelter. All our job is when we get the call, we provide any additional resources to them that they may need.
The traffic you've seen on the highways, does it look like there's enough traffic to suggest like enough people are leaving?
And, you know, it's a difficult question. It's hard for us to tell if there's one person in the car or 5 people in the car and how many. My family has 2 cars. I'm sure yours has that as well. So you can't just count one coming out. So it's not a good indicator. What we want to watch for in traffic is to make sure that it keeps moving and that the traffic keeps coming. And that's why TxDOT and the Highway Patrol and the Department of State Health Services are out there working to make sure traffic keeps moving and that assistance is given if needed.
You mentioned that several of the shelters are in San Antonio, which are expected to get severe flooding and be hit by the hurricane as well. Are there concerns that these shelters may not be operational in a few days once that hits?
Yeah, so I want to caution on the hit by the hurricane. I do think we're going to get a lot of rain in San Antonio and we will get some high winds. I'm not sure that the truest forecast is holding to a hurricane force wind in San Antonio. The other thing to remember about San Antonio is over the last 10 years, they've done about $2 billion worth of capital improvement projects and drainage projects. If you look at our last 6 major disaster declarations that circled Bexar County wasn't listed because the drainage there is working. Now that being said, you put 24 inches of rain on any surface in a short period of time, you're going to have some flooding. But I know the people in San Antonio well enough that they take life safety as their #1 priority, and they're not going to put people in harm's way if they don't have to.
Thank you, guys. We need to wrap up.
Real quick with you, sir. If there's anybody that understands the dynamics of water, it's the senator from Houston. And we heard today that there is going to be some flooding in places that have never flooded before.
I would just emphasize, this is not a normal bad storm. You need to communicate to the public. This is all storms are bad, but this is a really bad storm because of the rain. In all the briefing, they focused on the surge. It's going to be significant, and it will not allow the creeks and rivers to drain. So my concern, and we'll talk to friends and constituents, you may not have been in a flood zone before, but we've never witnessed the forecast for a storm like this. It's going to be the rain, and the rain. And, you know, I've got a daughter and grandbabies down at Wimberley, and we know the flash flood warning's there, but they think they're in good shape because it's never gotten quite up halfway up that hill. I'm going to call them later today and say any experiences that you've had at that venue before, you need to revisit it. You need an escape route. And there will be flooding, I think, throughout the state that we've never seen before. That's the emphasis that we got in the briefing. And, you know, that would be my, if you don't remember anything else, it's not a normal, really bad storm. It's a wet, really bad storm. Partly they explained to us, of course, our atmosphere. The state's atmosphere has already got so much moisture that flooding could, once it enters the state, could go to central Texas and even concerns for North Texas, the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area. I just can't, you know, the thing that, and I've been, as you say, in the ghost area, it's the impression it's making on me is I don't think we've ever witnessed a forecast and actually the graphs of the amount of moisture the storm has, not to mention its erratic behavior of making land, going back out in the Gulf and then going down coast and surfacing. So,
should the mayor be urging Houston residents?
You know, I agree with the governor. That has to be a local county judge matter. And I know, quite frankly, County Judge Emmett emphasizes hunkering down. It's a balancing act versus the dangers of a massive evacuation versus if you have supplies and you stay in your home and you're not in the flood-prone area. That is probably, at this time, what the local Harris County officials are saying. But that's all subject to change. Like I said, I think everybody has to stay tuned because the potential for flooding in areas that have never flooded, I can't emphasize how great it is. I mean, it's just you go in there and they'll show you how, as it makes landfall, we know what it does, but the surge is going to keep the extensive flooding from draining. And obviously I worry about the whole greater the state, but the Houston area, you know, on a given day, a good hard rain can create havoc, but we're talking about days of hard rain. So it's the flooding. The wind is a concern, but the flooding is what I don't think anyone can exaggerate by telling people you got to be ready for it. And like I said, using my family as an example, you may be in an area that's never flooded before and you think you have enough elevation, revisit that location. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick, everybody.